Hey guys, Drifter here. We live in the golden age of anime and manga. You can go to Walmart and buy the latest edition of Shonen Jump. Everywhere on TV you'll see high quality anime adaptations like Chainsaw Man or Demon Slayer, and brands like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure becoming internationally recognizable and having their artwork in the Louvre. And I gotta tell you, as a 90s kid, this is like watching my dreams become reality. Because since the early 90s, I've watched countless animes and read probably a couple hundred mangas. And today I want to share with you my favorite one, because of all the hundreds of mangas I've read, none of them have left such a profound impression upon me as Blame. And yes, I know it's supposed to be pronounced Blom, like the sound effect of a gunshot, but we didn't have these kind of accurate translations in 2007 when I first read the work. To me, it's Blame. Blame is easier to say. I'm gonna stick with Blame for the rest of the review. Blame is a visually striking manga with an art style that's unique to its creator, Tsutomo Nihei. It's commonly described as a cyberpunk manga, and it's definitely that, but Blame is also biopunk, hard sci-fi, adventure, action, and even some gothic horror. The pacing on this manga can range from being one of the most hyper-violent works that I've ever read to an incredibly slow exploration of an architectural wonder. Blame's character design, especially for the villains, is extremely impressive and detailed. I've been watching anime since 1992, and I gotta tell you, I've never seen anime girls quite like this. Or like this. Or even like this. Blame is one of the most unique reading experiences ever created. It's right up there with House of Leaves in terms of complexity, but goes the opposite way in that it has very little written dialogue. The story is mostly told just through the artwork on the panels, so you don't really read Blame as much as you feel it, and this series is all about vibes. Instead of characters, the centerpiece of this story is its fantastical and frightening architecture. And the architecture itself actually tells the majority of the story instead of the characters. The reader's just kind of expected to learn about the plot the hard way in Blame. There is no exposition, there are no flashbacks, and characters speak as if they expect you to already know what's going on. There's absolutely no hand-holding for the audience in Blame, and I think this manga series has one of the most unique and intimidating premises in all of fiction. Blame is one of those series that is intentionally vague and leaves a lot of room for personal interpretation. However, I want to try to give you the most basic plot summary possible, because should you find this video intriguing and you want to read Blame, this might help you out because there's a lot of complicated ideas going on in this manga. Blame takes place in the distant future where humanity has become trapped in an eternally expanding megacity that's being built by a rogue AI. And I don't mean a megacity like you would see in the movie Dread or in Cyberpunk 2077. I mean more like a small Dyson sphere. It's enormous. It's bigger than planets for the most part. With humanity on the verge of extinction, a lone hero named Killy wanders the city searching for the net terminal gene, which, if located, a human with the net terminal gene could log into the AI and finally shut down the infinite expansion of the city. The hero's name is more accurately translated as Kiri in the Master Collection of Blame, but early translations had it as Killy, and I feel that's more appropriate because that's what he does throughout this manga. Killy kills everything that is even remotely threatening, and while Killy claims to be human, he's been modified to the point of having very little in common with humanity. He's super strong, he's super fast, and can withstand a variety of injuries that would kill a normal person, like having a quarter of your head blown off, and he also carries a small but unassuming pistol that can shoot through anything, and I mean anything. The pistol is called a gravitational beam emitter. It's very small and unassuming, but fires with such a force that he blows his own arm off from the recoil on occasion, and it punches through things the size of the state of Texas. It's outrageous. It's one of the most powerful weapons in all of fiction. The protagonist Killy has been on this quest for so long that he's become incredibly old and seems to have forgotten about most human emotions. So we have a very stoic protagonist. The city he explores is mostly empty, but its few residents are locked in a three-way war for supremacy. The sparse and nomadic tribes of surviving humans all lack the net terminal gene and are killed on sight by either Silicon Life or safeguards. Most of these groups are humans that have been isolated for tens or hundreds of thousands of years, so they've evolutionarily diverged. Some of them are 9-foot tall workers, others are the size of kaiju, some as small as fairies, and of course some humans are relatively normal looking, but they're not humans as we would think of them today. The silicon life that Killy encounters throughout the series are not cyborgs as we would think of them, but rather half organic and half mechanical life that has a basis of silicone instead of carbon. And I gotta tell you, the character design on the silicon life is some of the most menacing that I have ever seen in any anime or manga ever. It was directly inspired by Clive Barker's Hellraiser, and a lot of the villains look exactly like what your mother was worried you would turn into if you watched too many Marilyn Manson videos. The Silicon Life have a vested interest in ensuring that nobody activates the security measures of the rogue AI because it would immediately eliminate them. And then finally, there's a group called the Safeguard, which is the rogue AI that's currently building the city ad infinitum. The Safeguard view both humans without the net terminal gene and the Silicon Life as unauthorized residents of the city, which means if alerted, the Safeguard will slaughter both groups indiscriminately. And what's interesting about the Safeguard is that they are sentient, they're intelligent, a little bit of a hive mind. They know that they've been corrupted, they know that something is wrong, and have a vested interest in helping humanity recover the net terminal gene, but the corruption is so bad that the Safeguard cannot act independently to stop the construction of the city or to stop its agents from hunting humans. So our protagonist Killy, along with 4 or maybe 5 other characters that actually have names, spend eons battling various hostile factions, technological horrors, and just surviving in this endless cyber dungeon while searching for a key to end the madness. Next up, I want to take a moment to talk about the architecture of Blame, because it helps tell the story and it's central to the entire work. The author, Tsutomo Nihei, studied architecture at the Parsons School of Design in New York, and let me tell you, it definitely shows in his work. Blame's setting is brilliant and so frightening that it still makes my stomach churn just to think about it some nights. So let's talk about the architecture, which actually tells the majority of the story of Blame. In the distant future, humans had become so technologically advanced that they were able to artificially create matter, master nanotechnology, cybernetics, biotech, and a variety of other near-magical technologies. These future humans decided to create AI overseers to help them manage resources and, most importantly, to help them build and manage a paradise for humanity. Unfortunately, a terrorist group infected this AI with a virus and corrupted it, giving it instructions to build forever. This was explored a little bit more in the very interesting prequel Blame, which has like a heavy satanic element, but that's a different video for a different time. Most of the characters in Blame don't actually know exactly where the virus came from, but they do know it locked everybody out of the system. Then it killed almost everybody alive with the net terminal gene. So humans are locked out of control and unable to stop the all-powerful AI, and anybody that could log in is probably dead. Because of that, the city and the world that they lived in began to rapidly grow in size. The AI just kept building and building as fast as it possibly could, even so much so the Safeguard AI started hollowing out planet Earth for raw materials to keep building. The megastructure eventually swallowed the moon, taking that in for raw materials as well, and the expanding size and superstructure of Earth got so large that one of the shells has actually the same diameter of Jupiter, and we know it gets bigger than Jupiter because the main character escapes from that and goes out to even higher and bigger levels. This was not a paradise that humanity could easily expand into. The world of Blame is comprised mostly of inhospitable concrete and steel megastructures. It's also mostly empty because the resources necessary to sustain life are very scarce in this environment. But the AI didn't care. It continued to develop new technologies and deploy them somewhat at random in this new city that it was building, which means that many parts of the world that Killy explores have technological wonders, horrors, and monsters of the week, like the Eternal Cloning Factory mini-arc that was probably the creepiest thing in the entire manga. And many parts of the world look strikingly like what would happen if we left a modern generative AI to design a city. Perhaps the most frightening part of all is that the speed of its construction outpaces anyone's ability to actually explore it. Thus, the city is effectively infinite for anyone attempting to transverse it. Maps are pretty useless too, since random sections are constantly being built and rebuilt, so our main character, Killy, is looking for a needle in an infinitely expanding haystack of death. And since the city is infinite and random, this gave Nihei the option to draw wildly different architectures. Sometimes he'll venture through an area that looks like a gothic piece of art filled with statues of long-lost heroes. Other times it's a disturbing and liminal-looking bridge to nowhere, perhaps a megastructure so big that it fills the entire 2 pages of the manga and the characters are just tiny little dots down there to give you an idea of the sense of scale. Then at other times, the city takes on a bio-organic looking structure that resembles an H.R. Giger-inspired xenomorph hive from the movie Alien or Aliens. Other parts of this city even have a somewhat religious feel to them. But every single part of the City of Blame and everything that Tsutomo Nihei drew has a story to tell. So far, I've done my best to give you the basic setup of Blame without any spoilers, but now I feel like I should tell you why I so strongly recommend this manga above all others. Blame is a dark and menacing manga filled with jaw-dropping moments. It has a story that is intentionally vague on details, but expertly engages its reader's imagination. Everybody who reads Blame will walk away with a slightly different interpretation. Some readers will take it as a violent cyberpunk adventure, others might see it as more of a cerebral horror of what it would be like to wander an MC Escher-inspired hellscape. A number of people enjoy sort of wild and crazy post-human and transhuman stories about what would happen in a society with technology so advanced it may as well be magic. And of all people, PewDiePie did a whole video on Blame, saying that it had an almost religious significance to him. And I think that all of these things are valid, but to me, at the center of Blame is the story of hope. More specifically, that sort of impossible hope that humanity is known for holding on to. Our protagonist, Killy, has been given an impossible task. He has to find a needle in an infinitely expanding haystack that is filled to the brim with technological horrors at every turn. The indomitable will innate to humanity still lingers within the soul of the now cybernetic Killy and drives him to push forward through any adversity. This is sort of the ultimate dungeon run or ultimate version of running the gauntlet, and every single page of Blame is filled with incredibly detailed and cool art. It has its entirely own vibe. Now, I'll tell you the truth, it's more of a dark horror vibe for the most part, but it's a vibe that you won't find anywhere else, because the art of Blame is unlike anything I've ever seen before in or outside of manga, and it even evolves from the beginning to the end of the series. This is the author's actual first work, after all. So, in the first volume of Blame, you can see he's mostly just doing black ink on white paper. He's got some kind of chicken scratch marks, but by the time we make it to the last few chapters, the author is working with white ink on black paper and using digital tools to make things that would have been very complex and unusual at the time. Completely different art styles. So as you read through Blame, take note of the changing art style, because you can literally watch the author go on a journey of discovery alongside you. It's a series that I would recommend everybody read at least once. It's just incredibly good. So if you haven't read Blame, I would highly encourage you to check it out. Blame is actually a topic that I've been wanting to talk about for years now, but I've always been putting it off because it's a little bit complex. I could probably talk about this manga for an hour or maybe 2 hours and do a deep dive on some of the plot and the themes and the story and the technologies at play and the art styles and blah 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 blah. However, the purpose of today's video isn't a deep analysis. It's just sort of to whet your appetite and make you actually want to read one of my favorite mangas. I strongly do not recommend the anime adaptation on Netflix, as it's more of a snapshot, a tiny little snapshot of a much bigger story, and instead of this thing about liminal spaces and architecture and big sci-fi ideas, it's mostly just like a cyberpunk shoot 'em up, lasers go pew pew kind of action anime, which might describe like one chapter of this book. It just had a completely different vibe. Didn't enjoy it, don't recommend it. And in terms of this channel, I've actually never posted a manga review before. I've talked a lot about videos, I've talked about some comic books and other types of media. Manga's a new one here, so I genuinely hope that you enjoyed it, and if by some miracle the algorithm deems me worthy and this video is good enough to get some views or enough requests to roll in, I might review another manga later this year, another one that left a profound impression upon me. Fire Punch, which was actually inspired by Blame, but oh my god, is that a big boy manga. That one might have to be age-gated. Fire Punch is a very challenging topic to take on, so we might cover that one in the near future. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe, and check out Blame.